Speaking with Confidence, a podcast dedicated to helping you unlock the power of effective public speaking. I'm Tim Newman, a recovering college professor turned communication coach, and I'm thrilled to guide you on a journey to becoming a powerful communicator. I want to thank each and every one of you for your support. It truly means the world to me. If you have questions or if you want something covered on the podcast, just send me a message. Please visit timnewmanspeaks.com to get your free ebook, The Top 21 Challenges for Public Speakers and How to Overcome Them. Today's guest is Chris Duprey. Chris is a former Army officer turned business leader and coach, dedicated to helping people uncover their untapped potential. His journey began in the 82nd Airborne, where he learned the power of listening, leadership, and guiding others to find their own solutions. After the military, he led teams in business, earning his graduate degree and shaping his approach through mentorship, mindfulness, and the power of great communication. Now a partner at the Question First Group, Chris helps leaders and sales teams have better conversations, build deeper connections, and create real breakthroughs. His mission is simple: to develop leaders who create other leaders. Outside of work, he's a musician, a devoted father, and someone who believes that with self-awareness and intentional communication, anyone can achieve extraordinary things. Chris, welcome to the show. It's always great to welcome a veteran and fellow 82nd Airborne member to the
There we
show. I
go.
really appreciate you coming on.
Yeah, Tim, I'm excited to have this conversation. And again, like when you talk to somebody that knows what all the way means, it's a totally different thing, right?
It really is.
So
It really is. Yeah, I say it to some people sometimes, and they just kinda look at me, and I said, "No, just get out of the way."
yeah, yeah.
Please.
I remember signing emails
Uh-huh,
ATW
uh-huh.
exclamation point exclamation point. Anyway,
So,
yeah.
a couple things before we really get into it, what one of the things I really loved about your information that you sent me is your devoted father, and anybody who puts that in their bio or introduction really touches my heart because to me, there's nothing more important than family.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
I mean, my kids grew up sort of during COVID.
yeah.
And by grew up, they're 15 and 11 today, right? And so as they went to school from home, dad went to work from home.
Right.
And one of the craziest things that I saw is they listen, right? Like I'm in my home office and
Yeah.
the kitchen's right there, like staircase over there. And when they get home from school, they're hanging out listening to the conversations that are happening. They're
Right.
like part of it and they get to see, what it takes to do some of the stuff. And so it's just such a cool, like, I feel like even though you work a ton
Yeah.
in today's new world, like they're here with me and, you know, getting to help them grow and develop as humans is just a very fun thing.
It's so important for their development and your kids are lucky to be in that position. My kids were lucky to be in the position that I was in. They grew up in college campuses and interacting with people and that 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 really kind of gives them a leg up or helps them stand out because they feel so much more comfortable talking with and dealing with people outside of their age group, outside of their comfort zone, and they see how it works. So it's modeling that behavior is really going to benefit them in the long run.
Yeah. Yeah. 100% agree.
Do
100%
they see
agree.
you playing music?
Oh yeah. I mean, so you want to talk about the two biggest fans of my band.
Oh, okay.
Uh, Now my daughter's too cool now, but like
Okay.
she loves a couple tunes. My son will sit there and sing every word of every song.
Awesome.
Yeah. And my son is the younger one. He can play a little bit of guitar. He can play a little bit of drums.
Oh,
And so
man.
I mean, football's his
His
thing
thing.
right now, but
Right.
he can also pick up a guitar and play Seven Nation Army and, you know, little
But
stuff like
again,
that.
think about this from a developmental perspective. The more things that you can do, the more things that you have experience in, that helps up here, right?
Oh,
It
yeah.
it 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 helps how it helps in how we think, it helps in how we become critical thinkers, how we interact with different things that come our way, and by exercising different parts of our brain is what really makes us a more well-rounded individual.
Oh, yeah. And, it's an interesting thing. I My kids learned how to do their own laundry and cook. And I know that some parents that, like, they don't do that, but for me,
Right.
it was, my kids can handle themselves.
Right.
And so it's the same thing with, like, trying to teach them how to communicate, how to your point of, like, how do you talk to people outside of your age range?
Right.
How do you do some of those things? Those basic lessons, even if they're outside. Like, my kid, he played Seven Nation Army was the tune that he loved. He took some guitar lessons for about 6 months, and he did a little recital where he played that up in
Wow.
front of 25 families, right?
How about that?
It's a huge deal
Mhm.
for this little dude, right?
Yeah.
And so setting up moments like that is just key.
It really is. And it's also teaching them in a couple of things that I really wanna talk about is and, there there are some traits that make people or there's they don't make them successful. There are traits of people that are successful in the military and in private industry, um, in the civilian world, uh, initiative and awareness,
Mm.
right? You know, what have you found in your current position with people revolving around initiative and awareness, and the difference between the people that are successful, somewhat successful, and not successful?
Yeah. So, I think the number one I mean, I don't wanna call it the number one killer of potential, but I think the biggest thing that holds people back is this lack of self-awareness.
Yeah.
So, when you go look at leaders that don't know how their energy impacts a room, how their
Mhm.
communication impacts a room, how simple things they've said, like, when they can't see it, it has really negative impacts on an organization.
Right,
The same thing is true if you're not the leader, you're on the team, right?
right.
So the more aware we can become, and I think what I mean by that is the more we understand how we show up and impact those around us by
Mhm.
just being, the more effective we become.
Right.
Then you get to initiative. And this was a huge part of being an officer in the 82nd Airborne Division.
Mhm.
And I think it is a limiting factor that I see in a lot of folks. And I don't want to blame the folks. It comes from dependency that gets built from leaders, usually. And this is the example. And this, you see this all the time. Young leader gets put in the role of leader, like manager, super, whatever that is, because they were the best at the thing they did. So, Tim, they were the person that took initiative. They were the person that just got after it, that just went
Right.
all in, did
Yes.
everything, took it. Then we make them leader and we don't teach them anything. And so now we've added humans under them and more things to achieve. But they're so focused on just achieving it that when you, as the subordinate, come to them and ask a question, they just answer it.
Right.
And they always answer it. And they always, I don't like the word micromanage, but they basically micromanage.
Right.
So we create this bottleneck with these new leaders. So the people under them never practice initiative because they're just told to do certain things.
Yes.
And it creates this cycle of non-existent leadership.
Yeah. Because when that person that was elevated leader was never trained how to be a leader, eventually they're gonna move up because that's what
Right.
happens,
Right.
and they're not trained there, they're not training this person, and then it just becomes
It's a cycle.
roll over, roll over, roll over.
And so what ends up happening is the folks that work under those folks feel no autonomy. They feel micromanaged.
Managed.
They go to be compliant, do the things I need to do so I don't get fired, versus committed, which is like, I'm into the mission. I'm into what we're doing. I'm here. I'm giving you everything I got every day.
Exactly.
Again, which leads into the disciplined initiative.
Mhm.
And so when you look at folks that have been super successful, they're self-aware and they have this discipline, this drive.
Right. Right.
But what we don't ever talk about is they usually have had a great leader
Leader.
that is a mentor that has helped them break out of that horrible cycle.
Yes. Yes. And they
And that
and that person then becomes a great mentor. And
correct.
that's how it kinda rolls down. You know,
Yeah.
I had a last week I had, 4 of my former students come to town. They do a buddy trip every year, and I was really touched. This year, they chose to do it where I live, so they could come see me. I mean, I keep in touch. I mean, they've become, close friends and like family,
Mhm.
and one of them is a college professor at 40 years old. He's a department chair, full professor, and he was telling me about some things, and I had to take him back to some of the things we talked about when he first started. I said, first off, you've lost sight of what your actual job and what your actual role is because you haven't been trained in these things. And you have to understand, you have to touch back with that. Your job is to develop people to be successful in life. It's not to teach them sport marketing. It's not to teach them this, that, or the other thing. Your job is to teach them how to be successful in life. Your job as a department chair is to help your faculty members, help your students be successful in life.
Right.
And get back to doing those things, and everything may not always work out the way you want 'em to do, but ultimately you're meeting your mission, you're meeting the things that you're tasked to do. The most important thing is take care of those students.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we forget that sometimes. And on all levels, in all industries, it happens in the military, it happens in private business, it happens in education, it happens in families, it happens
Yeah.
all the time. We get so with stuff, with life.
Yeah. Because there's all these pressures,
Right.
right? So in the business world, right, you have revenue targets, you have sales quotas, you
Mhm.
have you marketing KPI, like whatever it is, that's a weight that you are carrying around.
Yeah.
And we can't, as leaders or aspiring leaders, let that keep us from that mission of we have to create other leaders and get them to develop and grow.
Right, right. Because eventually we're not gonna be here, and
Yeah,
somebody's gotta take charge. Somebody's gotta do it,
that's
you know?
right.
And just something that kinda popped in my head, you talked about being involved and being committed, and I always think about it from the breakfast perspective. The chicken is involved, the pig is committed.
Mhm. Yeah,
So,
yeah,
okay, remember that.
yeah. Oh, I like that.
So, um, we also talked about, how we can help. One of the issues with young people is they don't have a framework in how to talk to people because the the reality is, again, we're never taught how to talk to people. It's just go
Yeah.
go
Go figure it
go
out.
go figure it out, and that's what
Yeah,
we had to do, and and that's great, but we're in a different time in life. We're in a different time in society that, again, go back to the the helplessness because we've got this screen covering our
yeah,
face all the time. There's no need to talk to
yeah,
anybody because I've got it all right here.
yeah. And so I think that this is where it all comes down to is because everything's so much faster today, because everything is just immediate, we think that we can keep that just text-based communication going. And the reality is, when you get to a certain level, you can't. Because I've never seen conflict get resolved or a breakthrough happen in an email
Email.
exchange or in
Yes,
a Slack exchange.
exactly. It doesn't happen.
Right.
All those do is it creates more conflict, it creates more confusion, and here's Chris, let me just say this, there's a lot of things that aggravate me, but there's really nothing that aggravates me more than when people complain that things aren't being solved through an email. Pick up the daggum phone, call them. You can resolve this in 5 minutes.
Yeah. Well, it's
Get
it's
up,
the
out of your
number
chair,
one.
walk down the office.
Yeah. When I was the COO at Impact, used to hear this all the time and be like, I'd see it in Slack and just go, why didn't you just call them or get on FaceTime or something like some sort of where we can see and hear each other if we're not in the same building but it's become so, air quotes, easy, right? To just send a message. And I think it stems to what you were saying, Tim, is that we don't have a framework to go back to. We don't get taught how to, quite frankly, get past some of the junk that ends up in our own brains that gets in the way of effective communication.
Yep.
Right?
Exactly. Mhm.
One of the biggest things, and I think it was reading James Clear's book, Atomic Habits, that he talked about this, about how the brain uses the most calories of any other
Yes.
organ in the body, right? And so it then, to try to reserve, like, to save energy, it buckets things together, and this is where assumptions come from, right? So
Right.
we hear the same thing over and over, so we automatically make the jumps in here to that thing. And assuming is good in planning. Okay. Like, you remember from back in our
Uh-huh.
days in the 82nd, right?
Yep.
You
Yep.
have to assume when you're making a plan. But the first thing after the plan's done is you send out reconnaissance to go
To make sure
confirm or deny those assumptions,
exactly.
right?
Right.
But we don't teach people how to do that reconnaissance in communication. And
Communication.
it's so simple.
Yes.
It's just
It
asking
is.
questions.
It's it really is. And, you know, for our listeners, Chris and I did a pre-show call, and I record all those calls, for my research to go back and plan for this. And it hit me when we had the call, but it hit me again when I went back to watch. You asked, we were talking about, where people were getting hung up, and then you thought for a second, and then you asked another question. And then you asked another question, you said, "Now you get it." And that's how simple is that? How simple is that? Just
Yep.
ask the questions. If you don't understand something, ask the questions. If you want clarification, ask the questions, and let's pinpoint what the issue is, and then we
Yeah.
can deal with that issue, and then we can move on to the next issue.
Yeah. And so we call it, at the question first group, we call that the law of three, right? Where
Uh-huh.
it's like, hey, your first answer is likely never the real answer. It's not the root cause thing. So if you ask someone, so let's stick with my daughter for a second. If I ask my daughter when she gets home from school today, how was your day? She's 15, she's a sophomore in high school. Tim, she's gonna say the F word. It was fine.
Uh-huh.
Do I know anything in that moment?
No, nothing.
No, I don't know anything,
Nothing.
right?
Mhm.
So then, so too many of us accept that non-communication and we just move on.
Yes.
But I'll go, well, hey, what happened today that was, like, different from any other day? And she'll say something like, well, how did that impact this? And now we're in what
Now you're having a
so many
conversation.
parents don't get into, which is a conversation with your kid.
Conversation. Yeah. Yep.
You know, I love going even a step further, going, hey, Brooklyn, on a scale of 0 to 10, 10 was the best day ever, 0 is the worst day ever. Where was your day? Because there's 1,000 things to unpack now.
Yep. Absolutely.
But we can do this with anything. A team
Yes.
conflict, a research like, if we
Sales
are
meeting.
curious, Tim,
Mhm.
like, I think this is so you've got self-awareness, you've got discipline, but we have to be curious, not curious in the way that we just ask Siri or we, like, type it in, but where we're like, well, I want to hear what Tim has to say. So, Tim, what do you think about that?
Right.
It can be that
Exactly.
simple.
Yes. And, just in that example or scenario, what is happening to Tim? He's thinking, "Wow, Chris Chris wants my opinion. What? Nobody's really ever asked me my opinion before."
Right. And what do people love to do, Tim?
Talk about
We love
themselves.
to talk about ourselves.
Right. We do.
When I meet young sales reps that don't ask questions, I'm like, gang, if you just ask them what their day to day looks like, they're gonna tell you.
Yes.
Like,
Yeah.
if you, it's like Field of Dreams. And now I've dated the two of us.
Uh-huh.
It's a movie where if you build them, they will
It
come,
it comes
right? And Kevin Costner builds a baseball field, and what is it? The 19, I don't know. It's like
It's Black Sox.
the
The
Black Sox from,
Black Sox scandal,
what was
that
it?
team.
The early 19 something. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
The
Right.
whole point is, if you build it, they will come. If you ask questions, people will answer them.
Answer them. Yes.
If you don't,
Unless your wife asks you what you want for dinner, whatever.
but well, but here's the deal, Tim, and it's not like that one's a hard one, but here's the one that we always joke about. Where do you want to go for dinner? And your partner says, I don't know. Here's the quick win. Yeah, but if you had to choose one place,
Yeah.
what would it be? And people can almost always choose that one place
One place.
because when
Right.
we say, where do you want to go? It's broad.
Right.
Yeah, but if you have to just give me one choice, they're going to answer you. It's the
Yes.
craziest thing. It works. I use it
does.
with my partner all the time.
That's awesome.
I hope she doesn't listen to this and go, oh, that's the thing. But
So that's
yeah.
what you've been doing all these years, huh? Okay, now
Yeah,
I got
yeah,
it.
there you go. Yep.
That's awesome. So, let's talk about the graph from Radical Candor that we went over, because I think that number one, that's gonna help simplify it for our
Yeah,
audience, and
yeah,
then we can start to really kinda look at, wow, this is what happens, and this is where I don't wanna be,
yeah,
and this is where I really wanna get to.
yeah. So before I share it, let me give you a quick rundown here. So when the partners of the Question First group got together, we were going to film our first course, and we're like, hey, we were all huge fans of Kim Scott's work, Radical Candor. We love teaching it. It's the simplest framework because of this graphic that she has. And so we drew the baseline graphic, which was just a north-south arrow and an east-west arrow, right? And we said, what is our version of this? And so that's what we're going to go through. We call it we call it the Pathfinder's compass. Okay. And you can use it to assess um any leadership situation, any communication that you
Right.
go through. So let's start at the base model of this. So you've got the north-south arrow. This is who is the beneficiary of the conversation? Is it our audience or is it ourselves? Then we have the east-west. And now this is the spectrum of curiosity, right? Are we asking questions or are we telling? And so take a moment and draw that. And the reason that I say that that's what we have to do, Tim, is that gives us this blank canvas to go, okay, if I were to assess my conversations in the last month, here's where I generally fall.
Right.
Well, they're really about me getting my needs met, and I really just tell people what I need. So I'm in that bottom left quadrant. Okay. So go think through that. Now let's look at what those actually are. And as we go through them, I'll build out the whole thing. So we have here in the bottom, so where the intended beneficiary is ourselves, and we're primarily telling, this is the command and control style that we call the dictator. So think of early Steve Jobs at Apple. This is just to do what I say because I've said it. Then we go over to the bottom right, engineered manipulation. So think of Harvey Specter from Suits, right? This is the
Yes.
lawyer. This is the prosecutor, right? They're asking you questions to say the thing they want you to say.
Right.
Okay. Then we go to the instructor. This is prescriptive engagement. Think of this could be like the sales leader that got promoted because they were the best salesperson. It's like, hey, just say it exactly this way and you're going to win. I'm rooting for you. So they tell you everything, but it's for your benefit. Then we have guided discovery. This is the Pathfinder. This is where we want to be. My favorite way to put this is the Ted Lasso character.
Yes.
Ted is a great,
That is awesome. I'm
right?
glad that is awesome. Yes.
So that's the Ted Lasso is the Pathfinder.
Uh-huh.
And it's this idea that we're focused on the other, like our audience. We're
Mhm.
focused on helping them, but we're asking them questions, because Tim, when I ask you questions, what does it force you to do in a
Push you
conversation?
it forces you to think and engage.
Yeah, to think and engage. And when we think and engage, that's when we actually develop this disciplined initiative, this awareness of what we're doing or not doing. This is how you create more leaders.
Yes.
If you just tell them exactly what to do, you create clones that
Mhm.
follow a system, and that's it.
Right.
Now,
Exactly.
here's the tricky part. Nobody stays in one box all the time.
Right. Right.
And so go back to this awareness pieces. When do I find myself telling more than
Mhm.
asking? When do I find myself worrying about me and getting what I need done versus helping the person that comes to me? And the biggest thing that I see, especially younger leaders, will will have people come to them, they'll answer every question. They will be the instructor or the dictator. They fall into one of those two. And when you ask them why, they're like, I just don't have the time to have the real
Yes.
conversation.
Yes.
But the thing that helps get the breakthrough is like, well, how many times does person A come see you in a week? Oh, like 4 or 5 times a day. Okay. So is spending one 30-minute conversation to get them to see the thing better than having 30 or 25 interruptions throughout your week?
Right.
But sometimes we have to paint that for leaders.
Exactly.
The key, though, is that we're focused on this. Because if we're not focused on it, then the vicious cycle that I will call of non-leadership continues. And you have all of these sort of lemmings doing work. And you have the stats that you see from Gallup and Gartner of unengaged employees at work.
Yep. Yeah, and I think you nailed it with the whole time thing. If we were to step back and look at it, yes, it takes time to build this relationship. Yes, it takes time to teach them and guide them to be able to get to this point. And you're d and you what you like you just said, what you don't really think about is all the time that you're wasting way over here just, you know, telling them what to do, telling them
Yeah.
what to do again, do it this way, do it that way, go call Steve, go do whatever, as opposed to taking the time to sit down with them, teach them, guide them, and
Yeah.
build the relationship because t you know, I know we're gonna get into this, but that it's that relationship that
Yeah.
is the ultimate is our ultimate goal, right?
Well,
And
and just think about this. It can be as simple, Tim, as an employee comes up to you, if you're a new leader, to say, what do you think we should do with this? You just say, hey, listen, I've got some ideas. Before I tell you what I'm thinking, what's coming to mind for you?
exactly, exactly.
And so there's a one of the things that a lot of people struggle with is they'll hear this message and they'll just say, well, what do you think? And now with certain people, that's going to be fine. But certain people also want to know that you still got their back. So it's like, hey,
Right,
I'm going to help you and we're going to spend some time here.
right.
And that gets the ball rolling.
It really does. You know, and I did something similar to that when I was a professor. You know, they would want me to give them examples of this, examples of that. I said, "You know, I can do that, but if I'm gonna do that, you can't use any of those examples. So let's talk it through together. You know, what
Yeah.
are you thinking? Because what you're thinking is probably gonna be a little bit different from what the student over here is thinking. So let's let's sit down together and start walking through it, and then you could see their faces go, "Oh my gosh, now I really have to think about this instead of just taking what somebody else is telling me to do and
Right.
doing it." And then once they get it, it's kinda like that email that you got a little bit ago. It
Yeah.
makes you bingo. You know, you
Yeah.
wanna high five people and just kinda it's you got it now. Now do that all the time.
Yeah. I got to tell you, this, listen, I've been a coach now for about 5 years. I probably have 4,500 hours of coaching under my belt, something like that. And I'd never received an email like this one from a young leader who's likely around the, like the same age as a lot of the listeners, right? Like a lot of folks. And the overarching message that she sent to me was how unequipped she felt in her leadership abilities. She was like thrust into this thing. She was shooting in the dark, trying to understand how to develop people. And she had this caring about it. She wanted to do it. She had a strong desire to do her job, be the leader that she looked up to, but she had no idea how to do it. But she had the initiative, Tim, and the awareness to go, this training is hard, but I am going to suck it up and get through this discomfort. And now she feels like she understands how to actually coach and teach
Right.
people. The burden of leadership is less. The training is something that she likely will talk about for the rest of her life.
Yes.
Now that is from, so you ready for the craziest part?
Yeah.
I've never met this human in like real life. We've only met virtually, and we've
Wow.
only worked together for about 5 months.
How about that? That's awesome.
Yeah.
That it
I I read it in the car at the post office as I was about to file the company's tax return, and I, like, started crying because it was like,
yeah,
"Holy smokes. This is what you can do when you just have real conversations with people."
exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
And I love the whole idea that she admitted that it was hard because that's where the learning occurs. The hard part when the learning it doesn't happen when it's fun and nice and good and the learning is the hard part. It's that struggle. That's where the learning occurs. And so you better embrace it. You better embrace that learning.
Yeah. It's the I had this old sales coach whom I love, guy named Jack Garrell, and he used to talk about the different like, the cycle of learning. And he was like, "You start with unconscious incompetence. You don't know what you don't know."
No.
Right? So it was
Right.
like, think about your kid learning how to ride a bike. They have no clue when they start. Then you get to conscious incompetence. So you know what you're supposed to do, but even with the training wheels, it's like really tough. Then do you remember when you took the training wheels off your kid's bike?
Oh, yeah.
And so
Yeah.
this is when they get to conscious competence. So they had to think about everything they were doing. And I remember my son started going and he couldn't turn because he was so focused on stay balanced, keep pedaling. And I just watched him go right down the driveway and then right into the road. And granted, we live on a cul-de-sac, so it was fine, but he didn't know because he was so stuck in it. That's the hardest part, right?
Right.
Then you get to unconscious competence, where my kid just jumps on a bike. He's not thinking about anything and he's off and running. That's how we basically learn everything, right?
Exactly. It is. It is.
And the hardest part is that getting past the hump of knowing what right looks like and being like you're constantly thinking about what does right look like, so how do I do it
Mhm.
until it gets ingrained. And I believe that that is where this young woman is now of it was really hard to get, really hard to get, really hard to get, and then she got it.
That's awesome. Good
And
for
now
her.
it's second nature, right?
Yeah.
But this can be true. Like this is the thing is that I love her to death, and I don't think that she's super special. She just did the work
Right.
to become the leader she wanted to be. So anybody listening can learn how to lean into how do we put our focus on others and be super curious.
Mhm.
And like, hopefully you're lucky enough that your organization invests in leader development
Yes.
around this stuff.
Right, and again, that's also a big key. When, we talk about a number of different things. Number 1, you as an individual need to know who you are, what your values are, and so when you go and you interview with a company, you need to know that already, and you need to have an idea of what does that company value, um, in terms of, their employees and how they're going to help them because I truly believe it's our responsibility to 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 be leaders.
Yeah.
I don't want somebody, I mean, to not ever develop and just stay in one position all the time. I would much rather have somebody come in and develop and move up, or you say, "You know what? There's as much as I love it here and as much as you're helping me, the next position for me is in another company." I would much rather
Yeah.
have that person, because, that not only do they value what we did for them and what we would continue doing for them, but they're ambitious and they wanna get better themselves, period.
Yeah.
And they may eventually even come back to us.
And I find that working with a lot of small to medium-sized businesses, they really want to invest in their people.
Yeah.
And I think even in the bigger organizations, that's still a piece. The big mission that I'm on is getting both large and small companies to understand that the problem we have is a lack of real leadership training.
Yeah.
Like
It is.
a workshop on how to do one thing of like that isn't enough. Like I mean, I remember being in the 82nd, the amount of times that we jumped to just and all the practice and rehearsals that went into every jump.
Everything,
The
yes.
amount of time you spent on the rifle range. Like you could insert anything, a
Right.
flippant parade, right?
Yes.
A
Oh
change of
my god.
command ceremony.
Yes.
Oh, that was a whole week's worth of practice, right?
Mhm.
But that's what it takes to get to these points. And
Right.
so if we think a annual retreat where we have a speaker come in and talk to us about the book they wrote, that's not enough,
No. That's
right? It's
that's
just not.
that's some time off that people aren't paying attention to, that they're aggravated, that they're not getting things done that they wanna get done, and it may touch a few people, but
Yeah.
they've completely missed the boat.
Yeah. And so when you get into real leadership development and coaching and training, you get leaders together, you get young and
Yeah.
seasoned and all this stuff, and you have real conversations. I was with Tim, I was with a company yesterday, it's a leadership team, and we talked about what are all the issues. And I'm just looking at I'm happen to be looking at the piece of paper. It's like it's over 15 things that they all had about how they communicate about all these different things. And it was like, y'all have this gift? Like the two owners were in the room and their wife participated. It's like, we're actually gonna go get to solve that stuff.
Yeah.
And most of it's because y'all don't know how to communicate with each other. And that's the thing. So when I think about, my daughter's gonna be in college in a couple years. A couple years after that, she'll go into the workforce. She's 100% going to have to learn how to communicate correctly. And by correctly, I just mean just be curious.
Curious.
Stop assuming. Lean into asking questions and let's get that to be the norm and have this like where we show up with like this question first mentality of, hey, before I get defensive, before I make a judgment, let me unpack what they mean. Like too often, have you ever, you think of a sales professional, if you tell a sales guy, well, I just think that it's a bit expensive. What's the first thing that they usually do in that moment, Tim?
Well, they ask follow-up question, what's too expensive? What is
Well,
it
that's
that
what we
you're
want them to do. So
right.
listen, so that's if they get trained, right? Like, well, hey,
Okay,
what does too
so
expensive mean?
so,
Yeah, yeah.
you
But
know
here's what, because Tim, you're a communications coach, so of course you answered that way.
I'm
But
sorry.
let's talk about most salespeople, brother. They're going to go to a discount or they're going to lean into their pitch. Well, it's really about the value and blah blah blah. And we as the consumer, like, I'm good.
Right, right,
But the simplest thing is just, hey, what do you mean by too expensive? Because too expensive for person A might be completely different than for person B.
exactly. Right,
And all we have to do is ask the questions. And that's how we get there.
right, right. I'm sorry. That's just yeah, that's what I mean, but but you're absolutely right. And 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 here's the thing, when you start doing that, that doesn't just carry over into your professional life, right?
Oh,
That carries over into everything.
yeah. So the funniest thing is, the second that I learned this stuff and worked with Marcus, my partner, or one of my partners, to like work on what is breakthrough conversations, what is this thing that we want to do, made me a better dad, made me a better partner, made me a better human, just because instead of sitting there with this judgment, I got curious. What the heck? Well, what does that mean?
Right.
Now, there's lots of things when you start getting curious, you like are open to more things.
Right.
And I fundamentally believe that that is just a better thing than being closed off.
Absolutely. It's 100% better thing to
Yeah.
be. Yeah.
It's like the idea of, if you have no food allergies, right?
Mhm.
But I learned that this happened over the last like 2 years. I'd never done one of those fixed menus where a chef just creates and but I went on this experience, and I've never eaten ceviche scallops.
Okay.
And I live in New England, and they brought those out, and it's like, well, I could judge it because to me it was, air quotes, uncooked and cold. It's like, or you could try it.
Just try it.
And so you just try it.
Just
And
try it.
now here I am talking about
Uh-huh.
that, because it was like it was just trying something new,
Yep.
being curious about it,
Yep.
open it up to something that I actually do sort of like now,
How about that? Yeah.
right?
The food referencing is a good one. My wife loves sushi. I can't stand it.
Oh, yeah.
But every year on her birthday, she says she wants to go and get sushi. So we go. So what do? We go and get sushi. And she says, "Are you going to eat it?" Yeah, I'll try it because maybe I'll try something different than I like, or maybe I'll try the same thing and I'll like it this time.
Yeah. It's about curiosity.
And it makes her
Super
happy.
happy. Yeah.
And
Heck yeah.
you know, I eat so much food anyway. If I have a bad meal or if I don't like something, I will be okay. Trust me. It's gonna be just I'll be
I
just fine.
share that. I share that with
You
you,
know,
my friend. I share
you
that
know.
with you.
So
Um,
what are the 4 pillars of your
yeah,
framework? You mentioned the rule of 3, which to me is
yeah.
it's
So
I'm gonna
the
say
law
it's the most important because that's the only one we've talked about so far, but
yeah,
it's very
no,
important.
so listen, there's 4. Here's the deal. There's nothing new or novel with them. They are
Right.
4 things that are out in the world,
Right.
but when they're brought together and we teach them the right way, they become this great thing we call breakthrough conversations.
Right.
So, the first one, which is potentially my favorite, is yes and. And Tim, this is literally stolen from improv comedy, right?
Right.
We take whatever is given to us and we move forward with it.
Right.
And I'm a huge Star Wars nerd, so I'm like, for me, yes and is like the force
Okay.
that surrounds communication. Okay. So that's yes and. We're always positive energy. Like our body language, our everything needs to be moving us forward, positive energy. Second one is vanguarding. This is the idea of, when's the best time to address a concern? Before it becomes a
Yes.
concern,
Right.
right?
Right.
Like if we address a concern before it becomes a concern,
Uh-huh.
we are not objection handling anymore. We are having the right conversation.
Have a very conversation. Right.
And sometimes it's as simple as like, hey, you might be thinking, and then you go into it, right? So vanguarding's getting ahead of concerns before they become concerns. It's like, what are all the but statements somebody could make?
Mhm.
And how do you address them so they can't say, yeah, but what about this?
And that a lot of that goes revolves around the preparation and research and knowing your audience, knowing who you're talking to, all of that stuff. It's so important to have an understanding of those things as opposed to, "Oh, you know what? I'm talking to Chris today. I have no idea what he's gonna say. Let's
Right.
let's wing it."
Yeah. Well, and it's also reading your audience, right?
Yeah. Mhm.
So, hey, you're about to say something like that they might sound weird. Hey, I'm gonna say something that might sound weird to prep it, right? And now
Uh-huh.
it's less awkward. Okay.
Right.
That's vanguarding. Now, that we chose that as the title of this, going back to like the Roman legion when they'd have the vanguard would be out in front.
Mhm.
This idea that we're out in front of these things. The third is question first. It's not a leader's job to tell people what to do. It's their job to help them discover it for themselves.
Yes.
When I talk to sales folks, I say, it's not a salesperson's job to sell the thing. It's to guide the buyer to make the right buying decision.
Ooh, I like that.
These are, but
Uh-huh.
just think about the power of that one for sales.
Right.
The second you stop trying to just pitch and sell the thing, you become a guide.
Yep.
And we don't like salespeople. We love guides.
Yes. That's I like that. I really
And
do.
and it's just lean into curiosity. And that fourth one, law 3.
Yeah.
They all tie together. And that's how one becomes a Pathfinder is they
Right.
leverage those 4 pillars in all their different communication.
And again, it comes back to, in terms of that breakthrough communication piece, you're building that relationship, and the more you're doing it, the more open they're gonna be, the more information you're gonna be able to share, the more you're really gonna get to the point, and then the more you're gonna be able to build that trust.
Yeah. Because the idea around all of this is whether it's we're selling or we have people that we lead, how do you build trust with people? How do you build that connection? They feel seen and heard. They believe that you actually do
We
care about
care.
them and have their back, right?
Right.
I mean, if you think of, you go to the dictator, right? The Steve Jobs early Apple type thing. He was just a jerk and
Uh-huh.
he wanted things done his way. Now, I think he's a brilliant dude. I think that I mean, I have probably 6 Apple devices in a
Well,
2
they're all running right now,
cell,
right? Yeah.
right? Yeah, I'm looking at 4 of them right now, and my iPhone I can't see. So there's, like,
Right.
at least 5, right? But the idea is he struggled at first because he was just demanding without
Mhm.
understanding people
Right.
and letting them do things, right? And then if you think of Ted Lasso, I was man, I love Ted Lasso, Tim.
I
Like,
do too.
Ted is like my like, I I aspire to be more like him. But if you think of the end of season 1, he gets Roy
Mhm.
to self-discover that he should bench himself
Yes.
in that last game.
Yeah.
Because Ted, like, I mean, I think the show portrays it pretty solidly that
Yeah.
he would have let Roy start if Roy had said he was gonna start. But
Right.
he asked him some questions. They talked about it. And you could tell that the character of Roy felt the character of Ted actually cared about him
Yes.
and actually wanted him to do what was right for him.
Right.
Not what was right for
That's
Ted,
Ted
not that was
or the
gonna make
team.
everybody else happy,
Right.
but it was about what was gonna be right for Roy. And so it's like, how do we as leaders, as subordinates, as just humans go, "Hey, how do I help the person I'm talking to just get better,
Yeah.
do their thing?"
And and, I tell people all the time, I don't care what business or industry you're in, what you do. I don't if you're an accountant in a cubicle, if you're an artist, I don't really care. It's all comes down to the relationships that we build. And you can talk about AI this and AI that. At the end of the day, it's gonna still be about interpersonal communication. It's still gonna be about the relationships that we build. AI has its role and has its role in communication, has its role in business, but at the end of the day, it's about people. It's about the
Yeah,
relationships and connections that we build.
100%, 100%. And that's why this is important work.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter where you're at in your journey,
Right.
right? You could be in a position, a business owner, CEO, whatever. You could be hi high school student. These things apply, and the second that we realize, like, "Hey, I'm not as good a communicator as I thought I was," and you start working on it,
Yeah.
your life will change.
Your life will change. And it's a skill like anything else. It's, you know, Like, so one leadership class where some guy comes in and talks about his book is not real leadership
No,
change. Taking a class in high school or taking a class in college, that's not, you know,
you got to practice it.
so yeah, you have to go out and do it. You have to do it,
Yeah.
and you have to get better at it. You have to seek out the help, and again, remember that frustration, that's the learning.
Yeah.
Embrace it
Oh,
and get over it. Chris, thank you so much. Where can people find you to work with you?
yeah. So on LinkedIn, Chris Duprey, bald bearded gentleman. Um, right. Or you can go to questionfirstgroup.com and you can find us there.
What if they wanna see your band play?
So you'd have to come to band practice in Middletown,
Oh.
Connecticut. We, this is the fun thing of having people at different stages of their life. My kids are old enough to be home alone.
Mhm.
2 of my bandmates have really young kids.
Oh,
So
okay.
we've not gotten out yet. We are gonna record soon, and when we record, I will make sure that there are links on LinkedIn to where the music is.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And you know what? One of my favorite movies, it's called The Drummer. I don't know if you've seen it
I
with
haven't.
Rainn Wilson, Dwight from The
Oh,
Office.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
I mean, it's
The
it's
drummer.
classic.
I'm
Yeah,
writing it down. Yeah, yeah,
it's
yeah,
called
yeah.
Drummer.
I
All
will
right.
tell you, last night, not that anybody's gonna care about this, but I saw Mumford& and Sons in a 2,700
Did you
person
really?
thing.
Wow.
And here's the takeaway that actually is there is, so for some people, that's a lot of people. But when you think about a band that plays festivals,
Mhm.
that's a very small, intimate
That's
crowd.
a small, intimate environment, yeah.
Now, here's the thing. When you get like-minded people together, so at a festival when there's 50,000 people, maybe 5% know all the words to all the songs.
Mhm.
Last night,
Wow.
2,700 people knew every word to every song, and it was this coming together, and you could see, like, when we just this is the piece about connection, like, you could see them on stage looking at us in the crowd and being overwhelmed by the connection that was there. And so if you haven't experienced something like that, I strongly recommend that folks
That's
go
awesome.
experience that type of
That's a it's powerful for you, but it's really powerful for them to see the mark that they've made, um,
Oh,
and,
yeah.
you know, the amount of time and effort that goes into to being a musician and to the there's a smaller percentage of people that make it as musicians and bands than people that become professional athletes.
Yeah,
It's
it's
all
crazy.
about luck. It's all about being in the right place at the right time, and to have that and to be in those types of environments, it's powerful.
Yeah, and the funniest thing is, as I'm trying to be a curious dude, that's what I focused on. I was like, "Look at them, like, imagine what that's like." And it was this whole new moment leaning into curiosity rather than what a lot of folks might do is lean into judgment. And so I'll leave you with that. It was super fun. Um, and you know, someday maybe I'll play the 3,000 uh in front of 3,000 people. I don't think so, but we'll see.
Well, you've got, you know, 2 of the best fans there anyway, so that's all that really
That's
matters.
right. That's right. They're honest to God, the fact that they like the music is a win in and of itself.
Exactly. Well, Chris, thanks so much, buddy. I really appreciate the conversation. It was great, and we'll talk to you soon.
Yes, sir. Thanks so much.
Be sure to visit speakingwithconfidencepodcast.com to get your free ebook, Top 21 Challenges for Public Speakers and How to Overcome Them. You can also register for the Formula for Public Speaking course. Always remember, your voice has the power to change the world. We'll talk to you next time. Take care.